Good morning to you all, and welcome to the fourth day of Social Work Week. For this session, we're going to share with you some of the key messages set out in the Social Work in England State of the Nation report. I'm Jonathan Monk, and I'm the Assistant Director for Policy and Strategy at Social Work England. We have a busy session planned for the next hour, and I'm delighted to introduce our speakers for the session. First off, we have Anne-Marie Glover, who's a member of the National Advisory Forum, a social work academic and a registered social worker. Anne-Marie will be presenting on the position of social work education and training as set out in Chapter 1 of the report, Learning to be a Social Worker. We will then have Katie Newbould, Head of Policy, whose team led on writing the report. Katie will be sharing some of the key messages from Chapter 2, Social Workers in England. Laura Haggett, professional advisor and a registered social worker, will be talking us through upholding the professional standards outlined in Chapter 3 of the report. And then we'll have Andrew Fellows, continuing professional development manager, who will be setting out the findings for career-long learning in Chapter 4. We will then be joined by Dan Racher, from Head of Strategy at Social Work England, who will be setting out how we developed our new strategy, and he'll be sharing the strategic priorities and objectives for the organisation for the next 3 years. We're lucky to be joined by Nifty Fox Creative, who will be creating a visual representation of the session for us this morning. The report was published only 2 weeks ago, and it represents a unique perspective of social work practice in England. Over our first 3 years, we committed to sharing our learning and reflections as the specialist regulator of social work in England since 2019. We published 2 interim reports, and this State of the Nation is the third and final report. Through our regulatory activities, our engagement, research and discussions, we've learned a great deal about the sector, the profession, and what's important to people with lived experience. The report aims to reinforce the vital role of social work in society to support millions of people to improve their chances in life. We've highlighted the role and value of regulation in social work for public protection, and we've also gone on to consider the challenges the sector must now collectively address. The report was co-produced with members of the public, the profession, and our National Advisory Forum. We hosted a series of engagement events to hear what people wanted to see in the report and what their experiences have been over the last 3 years. These insights gathered from the engagement and from our ongoing conversations with stakeholders have shaped the content of the report. We hope that the report starts conversations, enhances collaboration, leads to action to continuously improve standards, and ultimately helps to create a stronger social work system in England. That's a system that serves to protect the public and promotes the rights and strengths of people and improves their outcomes. I'm now going to hand over to Anne-Marie.
Thanks, Jonathan. So Chapter 1, Learning to be a Social Worker. So why social work? In this chapter, we outline the landscape, the role and value of social work education, the involvement of people with lived experience, and the importance of practice education in preparing social work students for professional practice. We can see here some of the reasons people come into social work, often based on their values or their individual experiences. And our International Federation of Social Workers definition reflects this as a practice-based profession and an academic discipline. So a definition speaking to both the role of social workers and a profession built on values. These extracts from social workers and academics illustrate our strong commitment to social justice and the importance of our social work identity. We can also see how social work academics see their role as facilitating the learning of students, supporting them to explore these values, along with developing their understanding of social work knowledge and skills and the professional standards, preparing them for future practice. And the social work educator here acknowledges the value of a learning community where academics, students, contributors with lived experience, and those sharing their own experiences of practice. Social work education takes place in an environment where we bring all of our experiences and we learn with and from each other. So the impact of the landscape on social work education. This chapter sets out the impact of this and on some of the contextual factors that have resulted in significant changes for the education of social work over the last few years. Firstly, COVID. The global pandemic had a considerable impact on the broader student experience. Lockdown meant that for many students, their learning moved to online and often their practice-based learning too, but many continued in face-to-face practice. During this time, they missed out on many aspects of their student experience, the chance to connect with and learn from each other in that face-to-face environment. Although the pandemic is no longer referred to as an emergency, a number of challenges continue. The sense of isolation through this time limited students' ability to learn and impacted on their key practice skills, possibly confidence too. Although face-to-face experience is fundamental to social work education, learning through these approaches has offered flexibility. These quotes from our case studies outline how educators have adapted to hybrid teaching and learning, developing their approaches and introducing tools such as Padlet, Mentimeter, group work, and recording online teaching, and the benefits of these, for example, for students with disabilities or neurodiverse students. We would really encourage you to read these case studies, exploring some of the challenges faced by students with disabilities and of staff reflecting on how these approaches have promoted accessibility and an inclusive approach to learning. In January 2021, Social Work England commissioned research into students' experience of their social work education, and some of their responses to issues of equality, diversity, and inclusion are noted here. We know that other significant global events, such as the murder of George Floyd, caused social work educators and students to reflect on the experience of Black and minority ethnic students. In this research, students fed back on different ways that anti-oppressive practice and cultural sensitivity have been embedded into programmes. And again, I would encourage you to read the case studies, one from a newly qualified social worker reflecting on their own experiences of EDI, and another from social work educators explores how anti-racist practice has been embedded into their curriculum. It is important that social workers reflect the communities they serve. This means ensuring social work education is accessible for everyone. We also know we're in a challenging time economically, and finance is a key issue influencing an applicant's decision to apply and study social work. Social Work England are keen to understand more about these barriers and challenges and how to ensure greater access to social work education. So the shape then of social work education. Social Work England oversee 297 social work education programmes in England, and we can see that over the 83 providers, there are more postgraduate than undergraduate programmes. There are multiple routes into qualifying social work education, with postgraduate, undergraduate, intensive programmes, and in recent years, degree apprenticeships. But these variety of routes provide an opportunity for people to access social work education who might otherwise have not been able to do so. This slide explores the regional data relating to social work programmes. It shows, for example, that in London, the number of postgraduate courses are more than double the number of undergraduate ones, and the East area offers more undergraduate and postgraduate. In addition to the number of providers and routes into social work education, Social Work England is keen to understand more about the number of students in each area. So, implementing the education and training standards and linked to the professional standards. In September 21, a year later than planned due to COVID, Social Work England launched the new education and training standards to ensure a focus on consistent, high-quality social work education. We can see some of the key changes here, including an emphasis on EDI, an increased involvement of people with lived experience in course design and delivery, and emphasising the importance of academic and personal support for students on programmes. This ensures students understand the professional standards on joining the register and have gained the appropriate knowledge, skills and values. Since Social Work England began regulating the profession, at the end of November 2022, they had commenced 198 inspections, of which 99 have now concluded. Of those 99, 23 were approved, with 76 approved with a range of conditions. And a number of themes have emerged from those early inspections. These include making sure applicants have enough information on the course to make an informed decision to study, ensuring universities have access to sufficient placements and a range of experiences for their cohorts, and importantly, ensuring that people with lived experience, employers and practitioners are involved in the design, development and review of the curriculum. So learning from those with lived experience. Educators, social workers, and students recognise and value the input of employers, practitioners, and those with lived experience into all aspects of the programme. And the education and training standards set these out in more detail. This includes their involvement in all stages of the student journey, from deciding about admitting someone to a programme of study, developing and delivering teaching and assessment, and supporting students in preparation for their practice placements. Sharing their knowledge and experience provides valuable insight into social work, ensures social work education remains relevant and current, and that students can effectively and professionally support others. We would really encourage you to read these case studies. They highlight the approaches and benefits of co-production and embedding meaningful service user and carer involvement in course delivery. So moving to learning through placements. As part of their learning, social work students are required to spend at least 200 days in practice in 2 contrasting settings and at least 1 statutory setting where they can experience aspects of risk and legal practice. Here they learn from and with qualified social workers and other professionals, develop their skills and knowledge, and embed their academic learning into practice in safe and supported settings. On placement, students are supervised, supported, and assessed by a practice educator and sometimes a work-based supervisor within their placement organisation. Practice educators are qualified and experienced social workers, playing a really important role in nurturing students, encouraging reflection on practice, and enabling students to learn and develop key skills and knowledge. Practice educators are also role models for students and understandably take pride in their role. Many qualified social workers go on to become practice educators later in their career. The report does speak of some of the broader issues for practice educators. And again, we'd encourage you to read the case study where students reflect on the value and support of their practice educator and their learning in these different placement settings. So, our new approach to social work education and training. The report also identifies some of the key learning from the inspection and approval process. Since implementing the new education and training standards, Social Work England have identified areas of real strength in social work education and are keen to ensure a consistent and high quality inclusive experience for all. Areas of focus for social work education include embedding equality, diversity and inclusion so that all programmes reflect the current landscape, reflecting and responding to key global events, and embedding anti-racist and anti-oppressive practice within our programmes. Social Work England are also developing new guidance around readiness for professional practice, including a framework for knowledge, skills and behaviour and linking those to professional standards. There will be a time of reflecting on the learning from these new education and training standards and revisiting these. And again, Social Work England recognises and values the role of practice educators and wants to think about their role as the support and how to enhance the relationship with them. And Social Work England have now commissioned research to ensure a greater understanding of them and their role. Social Work England are also considering what regulatory support may be appropriate and proportionate for newly qualified social workers and students. So I'm now going to hand over to Katie from Social Work England, who will be focusing on Chapter 2, Social Workers in England. Thank you.
Thanks, Anne-Marie. So, we talked in the last chapter about the impact of COVID-19 on education. It's also presented unprecedented challenges for the health and social care sector. Social workers had to adapt quickly to new ways of working to ensure support would continue to be provided. For some, work moved primarily online, whilst others continued to provide home visits at increased personal risk. While increased home working allowed social workers to save time on travel and afforded more focus on things like admin tasks, in some cases it also led to less peer support and reflection, challenges ensuring confidentiality and reduced time for supervision. However, the way that social workers adapted to their practice during the pandemic has shaped how it will be delivered in the future. The profession has learned that there is benefit in social workers delivering part of their roles remotely, and this hybrid model has proved to be an enabler for positive change. However, although digital engagement has increased, large parts of social work must continue to be delivered face to face. Though the government no longer classes the pandemic as an emergency, the profession continues to feel the impact. High demand for health and care services, a rising complexity of needs, and increases in vacancies continue to put pressure on a system that was already struggling. The country is now facing new economic challenges where poverty is on the rise, as are the number of social work referrals. Government figures show that over 400,000 children were in need last year, up 4.1% from 2021, and the highest number since 2018. In adults, a report from the Association of Directors of Adult Social Services highlighted that nearly 250,000 people were awaiting assessment, a 20% increase from November 2021. And it's not just people who use social work services. The rising cost of living is impacting social workers themselves. We'll continue to monitor the landscape relating to social work, as well as how the profession is adapting and feeling. This includes carrying out further research in 2023 to explore current perceptions of and from the profession. So the shape of the profession. Once they've completed a recognised social work qualification, graduates can apply to join the Social Work England register. This allows them to practice under the protected title of social worker in England. On the 30th of November 2022, there were 100,654 social workers on our register. That's an increase from just over 99,000 in November 2021. Although we don't have employment information for every one of them, we do know that 52.1% work in children and family social care, 31.2% in adult social care, and 7% in other areas of social work. During that time, over 5,000 social workers left the register and over 6,500 joined. We can consider the impact of people leaving the profession by looking at the amount of time a social worker has been on the register when they leave. The average age of a social worker is 46, and the age profile of the register has remained stable during the first 3 years of our regulation. At the regional level, we've used employer postcodes to explore the number of social workers in each region and how this compares to the size of the local population. As you can see, London has the highest number of social workers per head of population, with 1 social worker to every 495 people, whereas the East region has the least, with 1 social worker to every 671 people. We often get applications to join the register from social workers whose education and training was delivered overseas. In the last 3 years, we've seen a significant increase in that number. During the 2021 to 2022 registration year, we received nearly 1,700 applications from overseas applicants. That's a 175.6% increase compared to the number of applications we received in the 2019 to 2020 registration year. And over half of those applications came from just 3 countries. Global migration of skilled professionals can help to address staff shortages and makes the workforce more diverse. And there's guidance out there for social workers and their employers to help make sure that that transition is a smooth one. Through our engagement, stakeholders have shared with us how they're supporting their international social workers, some of which we share in the report. As part of our campaign to build a complete picture of social work in England, we encouraged social workers to share their diversity data with us. They were asked about their ethnicity, disability, religion, gender registered at birth where it's different to current gender identity, and sexual orientation. These were optional, and social workers could choose to share any, all, or none of their information. As at the 30th of November 2022, over 94,000 social workers in England had shared their diversity data for at least one of these categories, and over 93,000 shared all 5, or answered all 5 of the questions, and that number continues to rise since November. We couldn't fit all the analysis into these slides, so here's a couple of snapshots, but there's more in the report. What initial analysis is showing us, though, is that the profession is more diverse than the general population in relation to ethnicity, gender identity, and sexual orientation, and representative of the population in relation to religion and disability. Where there are differences, we want to learn more about the impact of those differences. So in 2022, we supported research undertaken by What Works for Children's Social Care, which highlighted the impact of racism on the social work workforce. Some of the findings you can see on screen now. We'll continue to analyse the data that social workers have shared with us so that we can learn more about the makeup of the profession. As the specialist regulator for social workers, we are concerned with any workforce issues that have the potential to have an impact on public protection, such as the high number of vacancies in both children and family services and adult services, which are exacerbating high pressure working environments. Annual government figures show that there were 7,900 unfilled posts in children and family social work in September 2022. That's 20% of the children and family social work workforce. In adults, data published by Skills for Care shows that the vacancy rate last year within adult social care was 10.7%. We've heard through our engagement that some local authorities are struggling to recruit permanent social workers. This has led to a greater reliance on the use of agency staff to fill those posts. Others are struggling to retain staff, resulting in experienced social workers leaving posts. However, our data shows that whilst there are a high number of vacancies, social workers are not necessarily leaving social work altogether. Over a 3-year period, our register has actually grown. We're therefore currently in the process of commissioning research to gain a greater understanding of the key drivers in this picture across all of social work, not just in statutory settings. I'll now hand over to Laura Haggart, who will take us through Chapter 3, Upholding Professional Standards. Thank you.
Thanks, Katie. Okay, Chapter 3, Upholding the Professional Standards. As part of our role to protect the public, maintain confidence in the profession, and promote high standards of professionalism, sometimes we need to investigate concerns about the conduct, character, competence, and health of social workers. This is known as a person's fitness to practice. Professional standards describe the skills, knowledge, and behaviours required within a regulated profession. All social workers registered in England are expected to meet and uphold the professional standards throughout their registration. Non-compliance with these standards is taken into account in fitness to practice proceedings. The number of social workers that pass through any part of the fitness to practice process is proportionally very small compared to the overall number of social workers registered with us. On average, this is 1,599 or 1.6% of the register per year. An average of 57 of these are removed from the register per year as a result of the fitness to practice process. That works out at 0.057% of the register as a whole, which we've rounded to 1 decimal place on the slide and in the report, which is why it says 0.1%. On the next few slides, we share some of the key data across the different stages of our fitness to practice process. This data is reflective of the concerns we received in the 2021 to 2022 registration year. Some concerns may not have been processed through their respective stage at the time of analysis, so any data provided reflects those cases that have been considered at that particular stage. During the 2021 to 2022 registration year, we received 1,734 concerns where a social worker had been identified. Like the first 2 years of our regulation, the largest number of concerns received came from members of the public, but was lower than in previous years. To better understand the types of concerns we are receiving, we have introduced further categories. Here are the 10 most common reasons for a concern to be raised. Once we have identified that the concern relates to a social worker and that a statutory ground has been identified, we then consider whether we should proceed to a full investigation. If a case progresses past the triage stage, our investigators gather the relevant evidence and pass it to a team of 2 independent case examiners for a decision. Of the concerns received in the 2021 to 2022 registration year and that have had a case examiner's decision, 37% were closed with no impairment found, 17.4% were resolved through accepted disposal, and 45.7% were referred to a hearing. Accepted disposal can be offered if the case examiners decide there is a realistic prospect of finding a social worker's fitness to practice is impaired, but that it would not be in the public interest for the case to proceed to a fitness to practice hearing or meeting. You can read more about accepted disposal in the report. In the 2021 to 2022 registration year, we held 1,079 hearings and meetings. We hold 6 types of hearings and meetings, including restoration and registration appeals, as well as fitness to practice hearings. The percentage distribution for final hearing outcomes is set out in the table here. We hold the majority of our hearings online. We initially started doing this due to the national lockdown in 2020, but after seeing the benefits that it can bring to all participants, we made changes to our rules to allow us to continue to hold hearings online. This allows social workers and witnesses the opportunity to participate from safe and familiar surroundings without having to travel. Including myself, we have 2 professional advisors at Social Work England, and we are registered social workers. Professional advisors provide practice-based knowledge to the fitness to practice process, and our role includes offering advice, support and guidance to staff regarding the concerns we receive, sharing awareness of the pressures facing the wider sector, and providing context to concerns to support decision-making and proportionality. You can read more about the professional advisor role in the report. To make sure we're meeting our overarching objective to protect the public, we also have a number of process review groups and networks at each stage of the fitness to practice process. One of these includes the Decision Review Group, which is a group of experts from Social Work England, the National Advisory Forum, and other regulators. The National Advisory Forum are a group of people with lived and learned experience who provide expert advice, support and guidance to our work and how we achieve our objectives. The Decision Review Group evaluates a proportion of decisions made by the regulator and independent decision makers and considers any developing trends and learning that can be taken. Some of the emerging themes in fitness to practice decisions include cases where social workers have received convictions for driving under the influence of drink or drugs, use of social media, and organisational issues which impact fitness to practice referrals. As a result, we recently developed and consulted on our new drink and drug driving policy. In some cases, it is possible for a social worker to return to unrestricted practice if they are able to effectively demonstrate remediation. During our first 3 years of regulation, 55 social workers with final orders of conditions of practice or suspension have successfully remediated and demonstrated that they are able to practice unrestricted. It is important for us to continue engaging with the profession to help those involved to better understand our role to protect the public. It also keeps social workers and employers informed about what constitutes a concern, how they are investigated, and the different outcomes. One of the ways we do this is through the fitness to practice workshops that our regional engagement leads run. We've shared some of the feedback from those workshops in the report. As we now hold diversity data for the profession, we will in future years be able to share further insights into the diversity of social workers going through our fitness to practice process. Thank you. I will now be handing over to Andrew Fellows.
Good morning. Chapter 4, career-long learning. A social worker's learning begins with their initial education and training. It's the first step in a professional commitment to learning that continues throughout their career. After graduating, social workers continue to develop their skills and knowledge to ensure that they continue to meet our professional standards. Career-long learning also helps maintain confidence in the profession and provides opportunities to specialise. The first years of practice are crucial to a social worker's development. They are the years where a social worker is qualified and is registered to practice, but has the least amount of practice experience to draw from. All newly qualified social workers should receive additional support from their manager, and some social workers take part in an assessed and supported year in employment known as ASYE. This means that they are protected caseloads for the first 12 months of their employment, as well as close and frequent supervision and an assessment against post-qualifying standards. Although this is a great opportunity, it's not a set requirement. We've heard some great examples of how qualified social workers are supported through those initial years of practice, some of which we share in the report. However, we know that this is not the case for all. We will therefore look to introduce requirements that provide mandatory protected time in practice and professional development for all new social work graduates across England. Each year, social workers are required to demonstrate that they are maintaining their learning and development and therefore remain fit to practice. They do this by recording CPD with us. In the 2021-2022 registration year, we asked social workers to record at least 2 different pieces of CPD in their online account. By the end of the registration year, social workers had recorded over 220,000 pieces of CPD. This was an average of 2.3 pieces of CPD per social worker. When recording their CPD, we asked social workers to tell us about the type of CPD they have done. Training continues to be the most common type of CPD at 31.8%, followed by learning from a case at 11.7% and on-the-job learning at 11%. Whilst we want social workers to choose CPD that is relevant to them and their practice, we would also encourage them to look for new and innovative ways of learning and development. In the 2021-22 registration year, social workers are required for the first time to record at least 1 piece of CPD with a peer reflection. Peer reflection means discussing the learning from a CPD activity with a peer, a manager, or another professional. In the 2021-22 registration year, social workers recorded over 130,000 pieces of CPD that included a peer reflection. This is an average of 1.3 pieces of CPD with a peer reflection per social worker. In the report, we also share an account from an independent social worker on how they reflected with a peer. Shortly after the end of every registration year, we carry out a review of a selection of social workers' CPD. This allows us to confirm that social workers are meeting the renewal requirements and helps to ensure public confidence in the standard of practice being delivered by the profession. The review is carried out by a group of independent assessors who look at CPD records of 2.5% of the register. This equated to 2,354 social workers in our last review. In the last review, the assessors gave an accepted outcome to 2,225 social workers, which was 94.5%, and an advice given outcome was given to 129 social workers, which was 5.5%. The assessors felt that the range of CPD was broader and the quality higher than in previous registration year. They also observed a bolder and braver approach from some social workers with a willingness to reflect on events and practice where something had not gone to plan. They also saw more creative types of CPD, such as podcasts, articles, and discussions. Where advice was given by the assessors to social workers, they felt that social workers had not given enough detail on how their CPD had impacted on their practice. Once qualified, social workers are able to take on roles in certain areas of practice that can be particularly complex or higher risk. Sometimes these roles require prescribed training and additional registration requirements, such as an annotation of a professional entry on our register. We currently hold responsibility for 2 roles with annotations. These are in mental health, the approved mental health professional, known as an AMP, and in mental capacity, the best interest assessor, known as a BIA. AMPs, like all parts of the mental health system, are under substantial pressure arising from workforce issues, including recruitment and retention. Some local authorities are having to share AMPs. The key challenge facing the mental capacity workforce relates to the transition between the 2 legal frameworks, the Deprivation of Liberty Safeguard System and the planned change to Liberty Protection Safeguards. Over the next few years, we'll look at the social work post-qualifying career and explore how we might have greater regulatory involvement. Our vision for 2023 and beyond is a framework that is appropriate and effective response to risk, which gives assurance and upholds standards and quality and advanced practice areas, that it's able to lend credibility and authority to practitioners, is proportionate, and is developed in close collaboration with the sector, including those with lived and learned experience of social work and employers of social workers. This brings us on to co-production. Co-production helps the social work profession be the best it can be and ensures ongoing learning and inclusion. We believe that people who are affected by our work as a regulator should have the opportunities to share their views and help shape our work as well as our policies and procedures. One of the ways in which we champion co-production is through our National Advisory Forum. As we said earlier, they act as a critical friend and help shape our regulatory work, such as helping develop our strategy, auditing fitness to practice decisions, and reviewing publications such as this report. In the report, a social worker and 2 people with lived experience share how they collaborated to produce a virtual webinar on the barriers boys may face when speaking of and seeking help for their experience of sexual abuse. We also include an overview of one of our key annual moments of engagement with the sector, Social Work Week. Hopefully, as you'll be aware, the Social Work Week programme and individual sessions are being co-produced with the National Advisory Forum and other people from across England with lived and learned experience of social work. Hopefully you will agree that it's a great opportunity to meaningfully connect with other social workers and those who use social work services and share experiences through reflection. Thank you. I'm now going to hand back over to Katie Newbould.
Thanks, Andrew. So that was a bit of a whistle-stop tour of the report. There is a lot more in there, so I do encourage you to go and take a look. But now that you've heard some of the highlights, we thought we'd just ask a few questions just to kind of get a bit of an idea of you know, any initial thoughts or anything like that. So if you want to grab a device, if you've got access to one, go to an internet page and go to www.menti.com. And then on the screen that pops up, it'll ask you for a code, and you just need to enter the code that's highlighted on screen, 75639703. So I'll switch us over to the slides. So as you can see, that code is still along the top. So please do grab a device and hit the code. I can see people liking already. That's great. Thank you. So on to that first question then. There's only a few. We've shared a lot of data in this presentation, so we're keen to know if there were any that stood out, any standout findings for you in the presentation today or the report, if you've had a chance to read it. That's great. Thanks, everybody. Yeah, I can see a few themes developing already. Can I scroll this down? I can. There we go. Right. Yeah, a lot about the number of social workers on the register or increases. Yeah. Overseas. Wonderful. Thanks, everybody. Do continue to answer. I'm just conscious of time, so I will move us along to the next question. So did anything in the report or presentation surprise you? I appreciate there may be some answers to the first question that also belong here. But yeah, was there anything that surprised you that you weren't expecting? Interesting. Yeah, a bit of a mixture. Some say no surprises. Yeah, number of social workers, types of CPD activities. How good we are at CPD, I like that. Yeah. Oh, that's great. Oh, it continues. Yeah, vacancies. Great. Thanks, everybody. I'll move us on again to question 3. We talked in some of the chapters about the challenges facing the profession, and we have heard a lot through our engagement and through our data, but we're keen to hear whether you can share a challenge that's facing you or facing you in your region. And interesting to see, you know, whether this aligns with the report, etc. Yeah, vacancies and recruitment's a strong one, isn't it? Yeah. Increase in referrals, yeah, demands on services. Great. Thanks, everybody. As I say, do continue to answer. We'll capture all of your feedback, even if I'm not showing that question on screen at the moment. And then just quickly on to our last question then. We'd like to share more of the things that we're learning in future. So we're keen to hear how you'd like to hear about those things, how we could share that information with you that would be helpful and accessible to you. So this one is set up to be a word cloud. So the more people that say something, as you can see, the bigger the word will be. So at the moment, our most popular response is email, which is not surprising. But great to hear some other options as well. I always enjoy the word clouds, watching it build. Some great ideas in there as well, like podcasts and webinars. Great. Thanks, everybody. I'll keep this open so you can continue to comment. I will switch us back now to the presentation and hand over to Dan.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for listening to all of that amazing data. I've got a series of much more basic slides here, so just let's go with this one. I'm here to talk about our strategy for 2023 to 26, which we've subtitled Driving Positive Change, because that's what we're all about. It was published last week, and I'm here to give you a little bit of a flavour about what it is, how we developed it, and what does it say. I will, of course, recommend you go and read it because I think it's really interesting piece of work. I'm just going to talk briefly about what it is, and I'm going to start by looking back. We went live in December 19 with a strategy to essentially get established, set up systems and processes, and give a clear statement about what we were going to do and how we were going to do it and what kind of a regulator we'd be. All things considered, we think we're pretty proud of what we've done. the strategy now is to say, okay, 3 years in along the line, what have we actually what have we learned? And I've just seen we've learned a very large amount of information. So what have we learned? What have we experienced? And what have we heard? So where do we go next on our journey? I'm just going to very brief reminder of what the strategy is for us, because I know a strategy is a very fashionable, it can be quite an off-putting term. So just saying what it is for us, we think it's 3 things. It's a statement about where we're headed as an organisation, what we think is important, and where we're going to focus our activity. It's a set of strategic objectives that sort of say, we'll give a little bit more detail about that and says, okay, so this is where you're heading. What does it look like? And finally, and we think this is really, really important, it's kind of an affirmation of our values and our behaviours about how we regulate and how we work with people, because we know that being a regulator and protecting the public and championing the profession is a privilege, and we take great care in how we do that. We need to be careful and open and respectful, and that really matters to us. So then looking at the next slide here, it's a little, oh sorry, can I go back one please, Katie, the previous slide? Thanks very much. How we developed the strategy, because how we got here is really, really important to us. The short answer is we did a lot of listening. I mean, we also did a lot of staring into middle distance, thinking deep and powerful thoughts and looking at data, but fundamentally this was about a lot of listening. We wanted to find out what people were thinking and what people were saying. So we kind of put this largely into two sections of activity. The first bit was national engagement. We did lots of national engagement events. We did focus groups, regional focus groups. We went out and talked to lots of people just to try and get a sense about what people thought, and asking the 3 questions that you've seen here: what you think about us and where you think we would like to go better. We had a really big focus on listening to those with lived and learned experience, and we were tremendously well supported by our National Advisory Forum in how to do that, co-producing the activity with them. We really wanted to make sure we heard from as wide and diverse a group of voices as possible, because we wanted to hear lots of different views about people's lives, their thoughts, their voices, and above all their creativity, because I was a really strong believer that lots of the good answers for things do not come from inside an organisation, they can also come from outside. I'm going to give you a very, very quick summary of some of the things we heard. We did publish a full response to consultation and how we responded, so that's online. It's just you read that, but a couple of really big things just to pull out. The first is there was a lot of social workers didn't fully understand what regulation is and what it's about and why it matters to those who use service, and why we keep talking about public protection. We think this is really important because it's their responsibilities as a profession. So we're going to respond to that, and we've got some activity planned, but kind of to focus on explaining, educating and informing that, because whilst we've done a lot, there's still more to do. There was a lot about our public voice, how we speak, how we engage, and the fact that we do not overtly challenge difficult situations that are happening, and we don't provide a running commentary on certain issues. Fundamentally, that's not our role as a regulator. That's not what regulators do. But we do here that where we have information and evidence and a perspective which is could be really helpful in terms of national debates, we can be more open and be more active in how we do that. We've also heard quite a lot about how we don't champion the profession and that we don't value social work. The main response to that, I would say, is we're on day 4 of Social Work Week, which is our 3rd Social Work Week. So I think that pretty much shows what the value that we attach to the profession. Something else that was touched on earlier as well was there's a big misconception about fitness to practice volumes, with people thinking that we have many more social workers annually are engaged in fitness to practice hearings and many more are removed from the register. And that's simply not the case, if you've seen from the data. And the final thing we heard, the biggest final thing we've heard again just from the Mentimeter just now, is frankly that things are quite tough out there, frankly. And we had an interest in what we can do to help address some of these issues. And there was a really big recognition that people wanted to hear what we said about that and wanted us to do some activity on that. I'm going to whiz through this very quickly. Can I have the next slide, please, Katie? This is our plan on a page. this basically sets out in clear and simple form, I think, what we're going to be doing over the next 3 years, 3 main strategic themes and a lot of stuff about how we're going to be doing that. Prevention and impact theme. This is the new one for us. This is the big and frankly complicated area. This is the bit that says it's so much, we think it's better to prevent things going wrong in the first place rather than trying to mop up the pieces. This is the best way to manage risk, and this is the best way to protect the public. And we are thinking about this in terms of trying to get ahead of the curve. We've had a lot of information today from Mentimeter and from Katie's team about some of the difficulties with retention and recruitment and how tough it is out there. This is the bit where we say we're going to try and do something about that. We can't regulate vacancies out of existence, but we can work with people across the sector and across the profession as a whole to try and tackle some of these issues together. We've started to go public with some of these things. We've set up working groups with organisations right across the profession and the sector to try and address some of these. It's really early days. This is delicate territory for a regulator, and this is new territory for a regulator, but we are tremendously serious in the importance of doing that. It's just going to have to bear with us while we work through exactly how that works, but we also need you to come on that journey with us. The next one is regulation and protection. This is a little, oh, sorry, can I go back a slide? So, Katie, this is regulation and protection. This is a much more established area for us. This is about improving our activity on the basis of what we learned and what we've seen, and particularly on the vast and rich data we have on EDR from the profession now, which will help this work hugely. What we're talking about improving can mean lots of different things to lots of different people. For us, it means being transparent and being efficient and being responsive, and above all being fair. It means being focused on users and focused on achieving like a taxpayer value. The next one is delivery and improvement, and this is a little bit internal facing and a little bit external facing. This is the bit where we say we're not a new organisation anymore. We're 3 years down the line. What does it mean for us in terms of our people plan? What does it mean in terms of making double checking that all our information is digitally accessible? How do we demonstrate much better impact in the sector and what we're doing? So this is us kind of going, okay, well, where do we go next? And the final one I really want to draw out is the guiding principle. So we've talked about this before, about how important it is how we work. And there were 3 things we've got here, but the 2 I really, really want to draw out more than anything else is EDI, quality, diversity and inclusion. It's embedded in everything that we do about driving positive change. We are really serious about this. The team have done some great work. We've got a lot of data now, and we've done a lot of things with that, and a lot more things are going to happen. So watch this space. And the other thing is that we really, truly want to listen and engage with and co-produce along those who are directly impacted by our work. Developing this strategy has been a real eye-opener for me personally in the value of co-production and engagement and how you do it. And it has massively improved the quality of the document. Can I have the next slide, please? I'm very short, and I'm not going to go through these, just saying these are our 10 strategic objectives. I hope that they talk to what people would expect us to be saying at this point. We think they are achievable, but also tremendously ambitious in places, and some of this may not be achieved in the next 3 years, but that's okay because there are lots of big things that need to happen, and if it takes a little bit longer, then that's fine because of the value attached to those. So I really would recommend everybody at this point goes and have a look at the strategy. It was written to be as undaunting as possible.